Hi everyone, welcome. We'll get started here in just a couple of minutes. All right, everyone, thanks for joining us today. I'm really excited to go through all of the release notes from our most recent release. A little bit of housekeeping before we get started. We are using a Zoom webinar today, so if you have any questions, please drop them into the Q&A box. That just helps me manage and make sure I get to all of the questions. The meeting chat has been disabled, so just drop your questions into Q&A. Or if you would like to, you can also feel free to raise your hand if you want to be brave and speak out loud during the call. I'll give you permission to talk. Today we're going to run through the biggest features from the most recent release, but there are a lot of improvements that went out in the most recent release, so definitely take a look at those release notes on our knowledge base after the call as well. And with that, let's get started. Okay, we're actually going to start here. So, one of the biggest enhancements that came out in the most recent release is now your home screen is also a place where you can create new projects and share them with your team. So previously you could only really see the existing projects and you could still explore some spatial data and things like that, but now you can really start to action that data straight from home. We're going to do a whole webinar on this workflow next Thursday, so if you're interested in that, definitely check your email. You should have gotten an invite to join us for the prospecting Giraffe 102, but I'll give you a quick overview of some of those features now. So here we're looking at a data set that we have here in the US that is called Regrid. Regrid is a national parcel aggregator, and it's a really great data set to use as an example. So I'm going to first show off some of our new controls on the lens palette. The first being that we can sort the order of the parcels in the list based on the order, based on the closest to the center of the screen and then outward. So instead of it being sorted, like numerically by parcel ID, you can make sure that those parcels that are at the top of the list are the ones that you're looking at here. Right next to that is our new lasso select tool. And this is really great. I can just draw a little circle around the parcels that I'm interested in, and it will select all of those parcels that are inside the lasso or got selected by the lasso. And then that list will be selected in my drop down as well. Once I have selected some parcels, you'll see that you have a few more options down here of things that you can do with those shapes. One thing is to add all those parcels to a new project, and that's going to sort of take the outline of all these parcels and set that as your project boundary. Another option is to create multiple projects from the selection, which means every polygon in this selection will be turned into an individual project using that outline as the project boundary. So this is really great, especially if you're doing like a market tracking or an exploration of a lot of different parcels. You might want to select and add all of those to new projects and really quickly just dive in and see what's going on there. So pretty cool stuff there with the multi-create. Other ways that you can create projects in your home screen is now you can right click on a shape and create a new project right from the map. So that's really simple. And then the last way is this new quick create button. And that allows you to free draw a boundary. So if you don't have parcel data, for instance, or you don't have something that you want to create that boundary out of, you can just free draw that. And you'll note that now our save project info pops up here on the right hand side. So previously it came in the center of your screen and kind of blocked everything that you were looking at. now this save project window comes up over here to the side. It's really easy to sort of exit out of it if you don't actually want to create a project. So it makes it just a little bit easier to manage your project creation. So let me demonstrate quickly as well how the multi-project create works. So I have these 3 parcels selected, and I'm just going to click the create multiple projects from selection button. And it brings up that same project save screen, except here at the top, I have this project selector. And that means that I can select each parcel that I have decided to make projects from this list, and input all of the info about all 3 of them separately. So that's really really saves time on that workflow. You don't have to go one by one. You can kind of do them each within the same screen and then save all 3 of those at once. By default, it sets the project name to the approximate address, and then you can change that project name easily, and it will update that project name from the dropdown, so it's easy to tell what you're looking at. So all of those new select features and project create features from home makes it really your home base for prospecting and site selection and research of a market. Really exciting stuff, and I can't wait to show you more details on that next Thursday when we have that prospecting webinar. All right, so let's go through the whole process here of creating a project. I'm going to note here that from my regrid data set, my zoning code here is R1. And I actually have the zoning code link here. This is a feature of the regrid data set. But this is important because I'm going to create a project out of this. And then I am going to set an allowable built envelope on that project boundary once I open up that project. And I'm going to use the new envelope controls to create that. So in the previous draft release that went out around April, we released the beta version of our envelope tool, and based on customer feedback and a lot of testing, we've made some really great improvements to that tool, and I'm excited to show you those now. So I'm going to just right click on my project and just do create, and that's just going to make a shape that matches the exact outline of that parcel. And then I'm going to click Open Flow Builder to find some of my transforms that are available. We have a lot of webinars available on our YouTube about how to use the different Flow Builder transforms, but the focus of the one today is the envelope transform. So when I add that, immediately you can see it kind of adds this like default shape to the parcel. Of note, it does not at this time read the exact zoning code and create this. You do have to put in some inputs, but those inputs are now much easier to manage. So I'm gonna go into my envelope settings, and I have this really cool visual editor that shows me kind of a preview, if I zoom in a little bit, of what the envelope will look like based on the inputs that I'm putting. So maybe I actually have, like a 15-foot setback before I can build anything. And then perhaps it goes up, another so many feet, and then it angles back to a height. All of these settings then get applied by selecting an edge. And you can see as soon as I selected that edge, it applied those envelope settings to that edge. So you can have actually as many different side conditions as you need. So perhaps your site is a complicated site and it has, a frontage along one street that has a requirement, and then it fronts along a couple of other streets that all have different requirements. You can add as many new sides as you need. You just type in the name and click add, and then you can just determine what side that applies to by using these selection tools. So really easy to adjust as needed. Another cool improvement to the envelope tool is in the detailed edit mode, which is just like the apartment tool if you're familiar with that. So the shortcut is Shift A. You're able to set your setbacks from this view. So you can see I'm dragging this node and that's immediately setting my setbacks more visually. Really simple. And then also from this mode, I can change what side condition to apply. So we've got our new side, we've got our front, and all of these can have different setback settings as needed. So it becomes really easy to kind of model up your allowable built area by using all of those new tools. We had a webinar on the envelope tool a couple of weeks ago, so it's definitely worth checking out that webinar on our YouTube channel as well, just to see all of the considerations there. Awesome. So once you have an envelope, you probably want to do some design work. And I modeled up a project to use as an example. This project has a lot of geometries in it and a lot of things going on purpose because I wanted to do some pretty in-depth calculations as an example. But the first thing I want to do here is I've actually just modeled only one example here, just one floor plan or one master plan rather. But maybe I want to do a second option. And previously what you had to do another option is add a new drawing layer, copy everything from your first drawing layer onto the new drawing layer, and then edit anything that you needed to. Now, I can actually right click, or not even right click, just click on the three dots here, and I have this option now to duplicate those drawing layers. So if I click duplicate drawing layers, it's going to duplicate this entire layer group and copy everything over to this new to these two new layers that got created. This is pretty complicated and I am sharing my screen, so it's probably going to take a second for that to load up. But let me just turn back on this other one. And now what I can do is just start changing things about this this other plan that I put together. So maybe I can compare two different options in my outputs. So if my internet will participate here, maybe I can just make some of these retail buildings a little bit larger. Maybe I can change the types of units that I've got here. So maybe instead of 3-bed, maybe I want a 2-bed. And we'll see the changes to all of those things in a moment when we look at analytics. But that duplicate also works where you can now delete that whole layer group as well. So when I delete the group, previously it used to just delete the group and the layers within that group would just go into the layer tree. But now you have an option of deleting all of the layers within that group as well. So just saving you clicks, making it a little bit faster to manage your layers. You can also duplicate just individual layers instead of duplicating the whole layer group, but I wanted to grab all of the layer group for my example here. Of note here, you can only duplicate drawing layers. So if your group contains both drawing layers and geospatial layers, it's only going to duplicate those drawing layers. Right now, you can only have one instance of each geospatial layer in your project at a time. All right, so I'll show the selection tools in just a moment. But what I personally am most excited about in this most recent release is the analytics upgrades. I am a former construction estimator. I love getting into all of the calculations, so I'm really excited about these new upgrades here. So previously, if you're used to analytics, you're probably familiar with the group by layer option, where you could split your analytics calculations out by your different drawing layers. But sometimes your scenarios are really complicated and they might have multiple drawing layers that you want to consider as one scenario. Well, now we have the option to group by anything. So it's not just layer, you can group by any property in your model. So you could group it by usage and maybe see a breakdown by every different use type in your project. You can group it by use type. So maybe you want to see a breakdown of building sections versus landscape versus roads. But my personal favorite is the layer group option. So what this does is it splits out your analytics calculations based on your layer groups and sort of rolls up the combo of your layers within each layer group into categories in your analytics. So you can see I have this now split out. There's the values for the two different options that I have here. And it's really easy now to compare, which option might work better based on the numbers. And it just gives me a lot more flexibility. Another option that gives us more flexibility is the precision setting. So previously in analytics, most things kind of automatically rounded up or rounded down to the nearest full integer, to the nearest, non-decimal number. But sometimes we need a lot more precision than that. So now you have the option to set your precision by setting the number of decimal points that you want it to round to. So you can set it to 0 decimal points if you want it to just give you a full number, or you can have it round to 5 decimal points if you want it to be really, really precise. You now have that control over how far you want that calculation to go. And another enhancement to the measure creation, to the calculation creation, is the ability to filter more easily by to filter to the types of features that you want to include in your calculation. So previously you were able to tell a measure to only include certain usages, but it was limited to usages as to what you could filter by. Now you can add as many filters as you want, so you're not limited to just one. And you can filter by, again, any property within the model. So maybe I want to filter this to be only the usage type building section. And then I can select that from the list. And I could get even more specific with this if I wanted to. Maybe I want it to only count elements that have the dwelling count is known, so is not empty. And that just tells Giraffe exactly what elements to look at when it's calculating this this value based on the properties you selected. So really, really great for drilling down and really getting the information that is important to you. Those 3 features are pretty small as far as the interface goes. Like, it's not a crazy change to how everything looks, but it is a big change to the effectiveness of analytics. So I'm really excited about it. And then the last thing that I wanted to show today is just some of our selection tools available in drawing. So I'm just going to switch back here to, there we go. So just like in the lens controls, we can also lasso select Giraffe feature geometries, so geometries you've drawn. The shortcut for that is O for lasso. And you just click and drag a circle, and it will select anything inside that circle or that intersects with it. So it's a much quicker way to make a selection set than perhaps maybe having to, click on each individual thing. We also, still have the marquee select, which is just shift and drag. But now you can also marquee unselect by doing control shift and drag. It it will unselect the elements that you overlap. So if you wanted to do a big selection and then you wanted to get rid of a couple of things, there's a shortcut for that. And then the last new shortcut that I think is really cool is our quick measure tool. So the shortcut is M for measure. And this just literally gives you a temporary line-based measurement that once you double click and exit, it's going to be removed from the project. So it's not leaving a permanent measurement, but it's really handy if you're like, okay, well, how big is this lot? Okay, it's, about 64 feet. So that quick measure tool is super handy, really useful for just making sure that everything is meeting your requirements. There's a lot more stuff, as I mentioned, in the most recent release. There's just enhancements to all of the usages and like the draft default usages and the draft default flows. So let me do actually a new project just so that this big project isn't bogging down my tabs. So if you open up the lightning bolt, you'll see one, that it's way prettier than it used to be. So we've got a nice little preview of all of our different flows. You can really see what they're looking like. And we have some new flows added in. So for instance, we've got this industrial crossdock, which does a warehouse with parking on either side and your truck court and your loading bays. So really easy to throw down a beautiful industrial development in a couple of seconds. We also have a really pretty road with perpendicular parking, even includes trees and the islands. So some really nice new stuff in that lightning bolt. There's also a couple of default envelopes if that's of use to you, and even a duplex subdivision. So if you're someone who's designing duplex style townhomes a lot, that one can be pretty useful. So I want to pause for just a second. If anyone has any questions, you can feel free to either raise your hand or drop them in the Q&A box. All right, I don't see any more questions here. So let me just sort of rocket through a couple of other things that are new in this release. So let me pop back to that. Whoops. Precinct app example project. A new thing that's kind of fun is now you can rearrange the views in your project. Previously, the views displayed here in your list in the order that they were created. But now you have these up-down arrows that allow you to change what order they're in very easily. The first view in your project is also your project preview in your home space. So when you pull up that project, it'll show in the gallery. The image from here shows in the gallery, the first one. So being able to rearrange those views is also super helpful. As far as sharing your data, we have an enhanced DXF export now, and that DXF export maps your giraffe usages to layers in the CAD file. So that's really handy for, giving your designs off to your civil consultant, for instance. And if you have multiple layers in your giraffe project, it'll actually create a DXF file for each of those layers. So often you've got, multiple options sort of stacked on top of each other in your giraffe project. You want them to stay geolocated in the DXF file. So we just export multiple DXF files for you so that you get each option in its correct location, and it'll be easier to coordinate that in that way. We also have some enhancements to a few other things. So new things for the SDK. If you are a developer, there's just some small enhancements there that allow you to access some of the new controls and different kinds of style settings. So check that out in the SDK documentation. You can also search the layer tree, and actually you can search views as well and properties. So if you've got, sometimes there are projects that have hundreds of layers in them and you're not sure where it's located, you can just pop open that search and find that layer real quickly within your layer tree. So that's super handy. And then there's just some enhancements to visual fidelity. So the terrain editor has better visuals, and you can set the fidelity level. So if you have, a supercomputer with super good graphics, you can up those fidelity settings just to have it look more beautiful. And, just performance enhancements in general across the board, especially on some of the default flows and some of the flow editor items. So really a fabulous release, in my opinion. The Giraffe developer team did such a great job putting this together, testing it to make sure everything's great and working well. And we're really proud to bring these features to you. So thanks so much for joining for the June release overview. Happy to hang out for a second. If anyone has any specific questions, just raise your hand, or you can drop them in the Q&A box. So thanks again.